Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Disabled People's Channel. My name is Natalie Boyum, and I am the president and founder of the Defeating Epilepsy Foundation, a 501c3 not-for-profit organization in Southern California. Today, I will be interviewing Colleen Quinn from Paul's Purple Warriors, a 501c3 not-for-profit in the state of New Jersey, which is advocating for seizure-safe schools throughout the United States. Also joining us is Cindy Arnold Crunk, who has been helping Paul's Warriors advocate throughout the nation. Joining us from England is Crystal Marie, who has been battling epilepsy. Thank you everyone for joining me today. In the
Thank you.
United States, it has been a struggle to remove the stigma that is associated with epilepsy. Many face discrimination at many levels, including children. Children with epilepsy have the legal right to attend school, yet face discrimination from the school system, and despite legal protections being put into place, they still face a very difficult battle. Seizure-safe school laws are being put in one state at a time to help protect children in case they have a seizure on campus, and that teachers and administrators know how to respond when a student has a seizure. I have had epilepsy now for 41 years, and I also battle post-traumatic stress disorder, hemophilia, and asthma. And I can say myself as a student through the K-12 system here in the US, as well as university, that I have faced a lot of discrimination. And it was a constant battle to prove to teachers and administrators that I did deserve to have a proper education.
I'm Crystal Marie. I'm 24 years old. I got diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 15, so I was still in school at that time. I also suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder, fibromyalgia, and asthma.
I'm Cindy Crunk. I live in Georgetown, Kentucky, and my daughter Lindsay was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2014. Zero family history, zero brain injury, just bam, out of nowhere, she had epilepsy. The first year was a roller coaster, and she was afraid to go to school because just out of fear of having a seizure. And I myself had the same fear. We went to her school and asked, what procedures were in place for seizure first aid. And our school here in our county, they did provide very minimal training. And it scared me. And I was like, what do you mean it's not required that teachers or even personnel like bus drivers, they don't know what to do. And I was like, and Lindsay, she said, Mom, we have to do more. We started going to support groups, and she was part of the Teen Speak Up, and that was her platform to promote seizure safe schools. So we worked on it for 2 years, and in April of 2018, the Lindsay Crunk Act, the Seizure Safe School Act, was passed here in Kentucky, first in the country of that kind. So after that, she did, go to school, but she still had some off days, and but that's epilepsy. It's not about just the seizures. It is not just about seizures. It's about the remnants that it leaves behind.
Very, very true. And I think that's through my advocacy work is one of the greatest challenges of educating people about epilepsy. A lot of people think, oh, it's just seizures. You take your medicine and the problem magically disappears. And they don't understand the complexity of epilepsy. It's not just a neurological disorder, but it's a comorbid disease. So it ties a lot into the what I find frustrating of mental illness, anxiety, depression, PTSD, so many effects it has on the brain. And because of such a lack of education on so many levels, it is why so many people on a global level are still facing a very unnecessary stigma.
Yes, and just socially, Lindsay, she had a lot of friends in school, but she doesn't have those ties anymore with those friends, and I feel like a lot of them abandoned her when she needed them the most. And she also, dealt with side effects of medications. I mean, you add that on, and it's just, it's so complex. And that's what people need to be educated on. They
Oh,
need to be educated on a lot of things about epilepsy. You know, a lot of people don't understand. Like when Lindsay was first diagnosed, she was having twitches and jerks. Well, I had no idea that that was even a symptom of a seizure. And most people don't. And that's why teachers need to understand. There's just, we have so much more to do, but I think Colleen and Paul, I am so proud to be a part of what they've done and creating a national page, helping other states. I mean, I'm just, I'm so proud to know them and be their friend.
it is, and it's amazing. Colleen, can you share your story with us about your work with you and Paul?
Paul started to complain to me in 2019 that he was having eye twitches in school. I took him to one of the best hospitals in Philadelphia, got him a checkup with his eye surgeon. They gave him glasses to take the stress off his eyes. And I thought, okay, you know, we're fine. And then on my birthday, November 29th, we went out to dinner and I saw the eye twitch actually myself. And I thought, okay, that's very, very strange. I saw in the rear view mirror of my car, the same thing happen again. I immediately dropped his friend off and drove him to the emergency room. And I described it as a seizure in his eye. And they told me that he was having a panic attack and that there was nothing wrong and it was not a seizure. He began to have them on a higher frequency. They began to not just involve his eye, they began to involve his head, his arm, his leg, to the point where he finally had one in the doctor's office. And the doctor immediately ordered testing. And we were fearful that he maybe had, a brain tumor at that point. It turned out, luckily, that that was not the case. He was diagnosed with epilepsy. We were very fortunate in the beginning that his medicine took him from having, 5, 6 seizures a day down to 0. During that process, I began to search for information about epilepsy, and I met Sherry Dudo, who was working on the same law that Cindy created about the same time, but her law had not passed yet. And she suggested that I work on the law in New Jersey. So we contacted our senator, and Paul and I went to see him, and he had heard Paul's story from Paul being on the radio. We created a Facebook page. We got 100% support. In fact, we dropped our bill in September and we had a law by January. So I said, why don't we form a national group? So I decided to create the page, and now we have like hundreds of members all over the country working on seizure safe schools. And there's 11 states as of now. So, we have 50 states in the United States. So there's a lot of work left to do in other states.
Trying to get politicians to pay attention to a subject like this, such as epilepsy, which really has a very negative stigma still in the United States, is a great challenge. And Colleen is doing remarkable work to help remove that stigma so the next generation of children who are going to school in the United States with epilepsy can go to school safely and know that if they have a seizure, somebody will know what to do. No, they will be safe. Know today how remarkable Colleen is, and her son Paul, who took part in making Paul's law pass. He went down on the Senate floor to share his story for the New Jersey Senate. And I let Paul know that for someone at 12 years old to take on such a responsibility took so much courage to share his story, where I know many people in our community who will not share their story and are too afraid. So we need more people in our community like Colleen and Paul who are ready to make a difference.
Different children have different protocols for their seizures because everyone has different types of seizures. That seizure action plan is, given in all the schools to all the teachers and everyone who works with the children to know specifically what to do for each child, along with the mandatory training. So this is life-saving legislation that, hopefully is going to sweep the nation here. And the reason I feel so blessed to be on this channel today is that maybe we can make things different. And by us connecting with this wonderful channel, we can help people in the United Kingdom to think what they could do there that's similar to what we're doing here. So my hope is that we could take this to other countries and protect people all over the world, not even just in New Jersey.
Having a child who is attending school, who is battling epilepsy or any type of chronic illness, I found the frustration of why we need advocates is, myself personally, I didn't have the protections in place as a child with epilepsy. It was assumed I was just going to go on disability. And it was a fight to prove that someone, sounds so negative, someone of my kind should have the right to go to school and know that they have the same opportunity as any able-bodied person. And even with my son's having chronic illnesses, I had battles with, I actually had to pull my son out of a school because he was being discriminated against by the vice principal. So I have found that even the fight for this can be as low as going down to the district levels and having to require these districts to follow these guidelines and to train these teachers and other personnel and make it clear, not in a mean way, but in a firm professional way, that look, they're in place for a reason. And if you have students who are falling under these guidelines and need this help, it's there for a reason, follow it. I think a lot of people don't realize what warriors parents have to become when they have a child battling a chronic illness like epilepsy.
Paul's epilepsy was under control through the law process. And, until recently, it is not necessarily under control now. We've failed a medicine. We are hoping that we're not going to fail a second medicine. I've had the ability to easily advocate for these kids because Paul has not been so sick. We have been very blessed to be able to be a voice for the moms of all the other kids with, epilepsy that's uncontrolled and, more severe forms of epilepsy. And, one of the laws here in the United States, and this is, a tough thing, I'm a little choked up as I'm about to say it, but the law in Texas that Sherry worked on was for a young little girl named Samantha Watkins. And that young little girl passed away from epilepsy, and the law is named after her. So, there's a lot of work to be done in the epilepsy community. And I'm just thankful that I'm in a position to make a difference because Paul is safe right now and we are in an okay position. So
Yeah,
for that,
no,
I'm very grateful.
absolutely. Kristen, you're hearing our stories about what it's like in the US to be battling epilepsy and be a student and what we have to do to protect our children. What was it like for you as a student when you were younger in England? Did you have similar protections in place?
Unfortunately, I didn't. So with my epilepsy, I had one before my 16th birthday, and I just got put down to being tired. I was too tired. I needed to go to sleep. The second one, I had a paramedic called out, and then it came to light they were looking for a brain tumor. But then that got passed, and I got diagnosed with juvenile myoclonic epilepsy with tonic-clonic seizures. And when I spoke to people before, like my teachers and stuff, they were like, "But you can only get it with flashing lights, or you were born with it." And it's like, no, it's just come on. Like there's nothing what's caused it. So it took them a while. And then I spoke to the school about Epilepsy Action coming in and doing like an assembly. So they done that. And I actually started working alongside one person in Epilepsy Action. And like he showed me the ways and explained to me how to live my life. And if it wasn't for him and Epilepsy Action, I still would be discriminated for it now. I've lost pretty much everyone. The first person what's not actually left is my partner. And I had my first seizure on him in January, and I was scared. I thought I was going to lose my partner, but he didn't leave. But everyone else through school, they seen it and then disappeared. Wouldn't reply to messages, do anything. Even my own father, like, didn't want nothing to do with me.
I'm
So-
sorry about that. I've had a similar experience with my father, so I can empathize with that. I'm very sorry.
It's just hard because you always have to think twice about what would someone else think. And then that puts extra stress on yourself, which then causes a seizure. So it's a trigger. It's difficult.
It is very difficult. And then I think a lot of people who are battling epilepsy, I think people who are not don't realize how much unnecessary stress comes with the condition. It's not
Yeah.
just having the seizure itself, it's how do you integrate with society when you're being prejudged? How do you adapt to things when even family is judging you?
So there's no actual laws in place that require training in England?
The only people who are really there for you is Epilepsy Action or Epilepsy Society. But other than that, there's no help.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. Is there a health plan on what to do? Like a seizure action plan when someone has a seizure in school?
No.
Wow.
What about
Yes.
emergency
Need to know what you're doing.
What about emergency medications? I mean,
I'm on an emergency medication, which is something you have to syringe into my mouth. So, but that's only if and when.
did they
Quite
allow
bad.
that in school? Did they allow emergency?
I've only just been put on that one, but I wasn't allowed to take no medication to school. So I'm on clobazam, and I take that after having a seizure, but that was refused because it's classed as drugs.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
that's horrible.
You know what's so sad to hear about that is working with as an advocate on an international level. I can't tell you how many great things I hear about NHS and the treatments that are more available for people in England. For example, one of the frustrations in America that we have is trying to find a good neurologist or epileptologist is so difficult, and there's such a lack of bedside manner and communication, which causes a lot of unnecessary stress for patients with epilepsy and their caregivers. And when I've talked to people battling epilepsy in England telling me, well, yes, I have my doctor, but then I have the epilepsy nurse if I need anything, or I can ask for this, or I don't have to worry about my medicine. My medicine's covered if I get sick and they have to call ambulance to take me to A&E. I don't have to pay for that. This is all covered. So when I hear that all those things are taken care of, the thought of NHS not working with Epilepsy Society or Epilepsy Action to say, look, if we're going to make sure people with epilepsy really get the best of health care, we need to start all the way down the beginning with schools to get schools to understand the complexity of this, so that as you develop and grow, you know, it's for the better. It's kind of ironic that they don't function like. I see.
I get free medication and free trips to the hospital if needed, but as soon as they can get you out that door, they will.
Okay. See, over here, sadly, when it comes to care for children and care for people, children and adults with epilepsy, the frustration we have is our healthcare system is based on free market. So if you have private medicine, private care, you may get better care than someone who's on some level of assistance, but you're limited to who you can see, where you can go. Our healthcare doesn't cross state lines. So it's why it's one of the major reasons people with chronic illnesses end up filing for bankruptcy in America is they get very sick and get hit with a 6-digit bill, can't pay it, and have to, sadly, their credit, everything is destroyed trying to get their lives back together. And that's why, with what Colleen and Cindy are trying to do, if we're going to make the changes for protection for people with epilepsy, it starts in the schools.
So I only get to see one neurologist and one epileptic specialist, but that's 6 months apart. And the only reason they've started seeing me again is because I've just had another seizure. So from where I went 4 years free of seizures, they didn't want to see me. They didn't want to make sure my medication's all right. They'd much rather me have side effects than having seizures. So they're refusing to change my meds at the moment when I'm trying to battle to have my meds changed.
That sounds like a very
bit more.
familiar battle. I've been there and done that. It's a very, very frustrating thing. And can you tell viewers today, if they're interested in getting involved with supporting seizure safe schools, what can they do?
If anybody is interested in participating in seizure safe schools, we have a national page. It's the National Advocates for Seizure Safe Schools. It's on Facebook. You just we have a few questions that you have to answer, but get on that page. We offer support. We've had phone calls with a lot of parents in, if they're interested in getting legislation in their states. We are a support system. We are a family. We will never, we're just there to support one another, because we all know that, when epilepsy enters your life, you kind of somewhat feel lonely, but we really aren't lonely, because I have found so many advocates like Colleen and Paul and you, Natalie, and Crystal. You inspire me to keep doing more for our children here and for adults. It doesn't stop with just schools. It will never stop with schools. We're going further with that in workplaces. We're never going to give up. We're going to keep fighting. We are having to pass laws just for our kids' safety, for our loved ones' safety. That epilepsy is still in the dark ages. And that's
And yet
why
it's one of the oldest recorded disorders.
Yes.
And there's a certain irony to that.
It is. It's the most common neurological disorder, yet we are the most underfunded, under-researched. It is going to stop.
And what is it? 3.4 million people in the United States. And then what's
Yes.
the worldwide number?
65 million.
We need awareness, and I think continued education, because I think that unfortunately epilepsy has developed a stigma. I read an article recently and I was flabbergasted by this, that as recent as 1974, there are states that did not permit people with epilepsy to marry. Now,
Yes.
1974 does not sound like that long ago,
Right.
but it's a long time ago. But however, think about that. That's such discrimination. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done for seizure safe school legislation, for legislation to protect adults in workplaces and, across the country. There's a lot of work to be done. And I just feel privileged to be able to take something that has really been tough in my life for Paul, and for us to attempt to make some good out of this.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm happy you brought up the fact that as hard as it is for our children, that when they become adults, we still have to advocate for them. I felt that, as a child, it was already hard enough. But when I crossed over to become an adult, it was all of a sudden like being forgotten. Like, just figure it out, just do it yourself. And when my seizures weren't controlled, the government acknowledged I was sick, but I wasn't sick enough in their eyes to qualify for disability. And it's why I realized I had to go on to school. I had to fight for my health. I had to get it together. I hid for many years having epilepsy because I knew if I told anyone, I would not be able to keep gainful employment due to the stigma and discrimination. And having to be on life-saving medication at that time when I was single, my medicine would have cost $1,000 a month out of pocket. That was my rent money. That was my food. That was my utilities. So if I opened my mouth and asked for help and lost my job, I was pretty much committing a death sentence for myself. I know I cannot rely on my family for anything, unfortunately. So in a situation like mine where I didn't have a backup plan, what do you do to survive? And it's why I do the work I do over here with my scholarship and helping people get higher education, encouraging them to learn a trade or start a business, focusing on improving their mental health and everything, because I feel so many adults over here have been forgotten and they don't get enough protections when it comes to health care that really is necessary. And that's why it is so important for us to all work together, because without working together, we cannot follow this journey and get what we need done for people with epilepsy.
Lindsay, she has been seizure free for 5.5 years. She battles epilepsy every day. She takes 11 pills a day. Anxiety, depression, eating disorder, the list goes on. She battles it every day. I mean, that's the remnants that epilepsy leaves behind. And I just, education is key. Educating our kids in school, maybe, there will be less bullying, of kids that have epilepsy. When I was sending her to school, I was, I'm like, I didn't feel comfortable sending her to school before, the seizure safe schools. But now she's in the workforce. I don't care if she's been seizure free for 10 years. That is always going to be in the back of my mind.
Two main places I feel we need training, or I should say three actually. First is in the workforce. I've had many small business owners say, I don't want to say no to somebody with epilepsy. I don't want to discriminate, but I'm so afraid if someone has a seizure on the job, are they going to retain a lawyer and sue me if they get hurt? If, I hire them and they have a seizure in front of my clients, are my clients going to run and never come back? So a lot of it is just educating on so many levels. It's not just, okay, here's what a seizure is. It's really helping to remove the fear on many levels for many people, to show employers that, people with epilepsy can have gainful employment. It is not, you shouldn't have to fear hiring someone with epilepsy. Another frustration I've had, and I actually had on my YouTube channel as an advocate, is to improve doctor-patient relations. I can't tell you how many horror stories I could tell. I could write a book just about ER visits. People assuming I was drunk or high, having complex partial seizures, thinking I was faking my seizures. I've been physically assaulted twice by nurses, thinking I was a junkie while I had my medical alert bracelet on. And I find it beyond unprofessional, and I'm doing everything I can to help caregivers as well as ER personnel to learn how to deal with someone in the ER when it comes to epilepsy. And the final one that I'm really working with local communities, I'm partnered with the city out here where I live, is talking to law enforcement
Yes.
about epilepsy, because law enforcement really doesn't understand what epilepsy is. When they think seizure, they think a tonic-clonic seizure. They don't understand absence seizures. They don't understand complex partial. There's a number of seizures they really don't understand. And what's heartbreaking with me having complex partials, like I said, I come off drunk or high, I can't comply. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to over the years who have acknowledged to me they've regained consciousness in a jail cell rather than being taken to the hospital because they were considered not complying with the officers. And with the I hate to bring social justice into this, but with the level of brutality we have in some areas of the country today, it really scares me, because I'm thinking of, what if someone has a seizure and gets tased or killed or shot and killed for quote unquote not complying and dying a very unnecessary death? So I look at our society, and there are so many areas where we really need to get on it and show people what a complex condition this can be and what we have to do to help people with it. The way I've been able to get it out, ironically, is through numbers, talking to entrepreneurs and saying, look, we have 3.4 million people in America with epilepsy. 70% can control their seizures with meds, but so many of them end up on disability because they can't find gainful employment, because of the discrimination stigma, the chronic stress of what they have to deal with. In time, it breaks their health down, and they give up, have to get an attorney, and just be where they are. And they don't deserve that. I go, now, if we could stop that and remove the stigma and clean that mess up, and that 70% would be in the workforce, I go, think of the economic growth communities in our country can have. Rather than people living in fear and isolation, they're contributing to society. They have potential. They're helping create opportunities. Think of the economic growth and the positivity it could have on our society. And the moment it's sad to say it, but the moment I bring revenue into it, the eyes light up and they go, I never thought of that. And I said, yes, you're not just hurting communities, you hurt yourself as well. And it's
Yes.
sad to say that you have to bring money into it, but Sally, that's the magic word.
See, I've been very blessed in New Jersey. We had Senator Beach, who immediately hopped on board with us. Our politicians, our legislators are really getting on board to do the right thing for people.
That is awesome. And I mean, I myself have never met Senator Beach, but to know that as he, him being formerly a teacher and hearing your story that he just jumped up and went up and beyond and essentially did his job. I applaud him and thank him for that, for setting an example. And I hope that other politicians throughout the states will see that example he set and live up to that same standard as well and help to protect our children.
Well, I have to say real quick, since Colleen said that, Representative Hart, who was our sponsor for our bill, he was a retired EMT. His wife is a teacher. So, I mean, it was like everything came
together.
Crystal and people living in the United Kingdom, if they could get some of these, safeguards in place where children feel protected, where, everyone in a school is trained. There is a seizure action plan. They're allowed to have their rescue meds. Some of the things that she has mentioned, if those things were in place in England, we would have, safer kids. The kids would be safer. We would have safer kids across, continents, not
and
just United States.
parents would have peace of mind. I mean, that's huge for a parent to be able to kind of feel some peace about sending their kids to school, knowing that they're going to be safe.
Oh, absolutely. And some people might think it sounds weird, but myself with children with chronic illnesses, when my children are having complications, what you're explaining is absolutely the truth. You can't get out of your mind when you're thinking, oh, I should be able to send my child to school and know they're having a good day and learning. You are sitting there throughout the day going, is everything really okay? It's like you have that mom instinct, that feeling inside you and trying to convince yourself that it's okay. You can't bubble wrap them. You can't obsess. You got to find a balance. I don't think people realize how hard it is as a parent and a caregiver to find that balance. And
It's not just that though, Natalie, it
Yeah.
runs deeper than that. You're
Yeah.
looking outside of yourself as someone who has epilepsy, but then I look in the opposite direction and I say to myself, how can somebody like Crystal, somebody like Natalie, somebody like Lindsay, or somebody like Paul be in a school and concentrate on their work, knowing at any given moment they could have a seizure and be stigmatized, lose friends, not have people to know what to do. So our fear is for them. And I appreciate that you're discussing how you feel sorry for the parents, but truly we are so concerned about our kids because we're worried about how they feel. So there's so much more to this. And I again would just like to thank the channel and everyone involved in setting this up for us today, because I feel like this issue, there's so much more to it than people really see. And hopefully, today we gave some insight and some useful information to students in England, parents in England, people in the United States who haven't heard about the law here and maybe want to get involved. So again, I'd like to thank the channel and thank you, Natalie, for interviewing us today.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, before I conclude the interview, can you tell the viewers today where they can find you on social media, on Facebook or any other sources, so they can learn about the work you are doing here?
Sure. So on Facebook, it's Paul's Purple Warriors, New Jersey at the end. But if you type in Paul's Purple Words, it'll come up. And, we're sending some kids to camp through that. We are doing a surfing event for kids with epilepsy with doctors and nurses present. Let me clarify that. And, our awareness. And for Seizure Safe Schools, we have a direct page, and that's National Epilepsy Advocates for Seizure Safe Schools. And I would encourage people from other countries to join in just to feel the momentum and maybe take some of the ideas and duplicate that in their countries or in their states. I mean, everyone has their own process of legislation, but just the concepts could be transferred if people knew the process in their countries. So thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guests today for taking part. Please like and follow Paul's Purple Warriors and see the work that they are doing for the epilepsy community. Thank you today for joining us on the Disabled People's Channel.